I just wanted to talk a little bit tonight, just sort of give you an idea about sort of what is the impetus behind, why I paint, and just sort of give you an idea about my mindset about how I go about doing this. And one of the comments I hear a lot is like people say, you make it look so easy about these paintings. And I can't get enough of this across to you about how hard this is to do. And if, I don't know where Karen is, around here somewhere, who knows my mindset earlier this year about, what a funk I was in painting-wise. I felt my paintings weren't going anywhere. I really have no idea what the hell I'm doing as an artist. Especially recently I moved back to the Brandywine Valley from living in Philadelphia for about 10 years. So I grew up along the Brandywine River here, just up near Marshallton. And so coming back to this area, which is very familiar to me, feels like home. It's a wonderful place to be. But I didn't know quite what I was doing. So I started searching out some farms to paint at, some nearby places where I could just walk to and paint. I tend to paint in places that are familiar with, to me, places I feel comfortable with. I don't like just going someplace because it's pretty or because it's beautiful or whatever. It has to sort of be part of my daily existence. So one of the things I did try to seek out with this particular batch of paintings is I wanted to go to some farms that were still working farms, where they had livestock, especially the cattle, and so many of the farms in this area now that maybe are preserved, they're still there, but they're not farms anymore. They're, become places where people store their boats or something, the barns or whatever. And they've lost that sort of feeling that I love about these old farms in Chester County. So if you look at a lot of the paintings, you'll see that I'm really interested in that patina of reality that are in these places, like that barn back there with a cow. Look at that post. Look at how many years it has taken for those cows to wear away the stucco on that stone post for it to achieve that beautiful patina and weathered effect. And those are the kind of places that I just love to be in. They're unpretentious places. They're real. They're usually places where there's no people, which I feel much more comfortable in. I don't like to paint people. I don't like to sort of be around people when I'm painting. So, I have cows as company and barn cats as company when I'm painting. And it's just great. But yeah, I felt, early on this year, I really felt a little bit lost in, I felt the paintings didn't have any direction. I didn't quite know how I was approaching painting. I was reading a lot about the Wyeths since I was, moving back into this kind of Wyeth world here. It's, that Wyeth family kind of hangs over everything in this valley. So I was reading a lot about, especially Andrew Wyeth's philosophy about art. And it fascinated me how he really honed in on his connection and emotions that a broomstick would give him, or some stupid little thing, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of his subjects, which I usually don't do. I'm much more of a painter of impression, of how sort of the light feels in a very quick and painterly way. But a lot of these paintings, I don't know if you can feel any of the difference between maybe some of my work from a few years ago. These are a little bit more realized or nuanced, or getting into sort of the particulars of things a little bit more, which is a little bit different for me. And that's sort of, I struggled with that very much with these paintings. I wasn't quite sure whether that was something that I needed or wanted to do, but I started experimenting with it. So I do want to sort of give you an idea that, it doesn't come easy. It's a great struggle to get this stuff done. And there's probably, a good 20 paintings that never saw the light of day. Some of them are underneath these paintings. So I'll take an old painting, I'll turn it upside down and paint directly on top of it. So if you look closely at some of these, you might see texture of paintings underneath them. But there are a couple places, like this is a Piles Bridge on Route 100, just below Chad's Ford. And I sought out this place because I've always loved this bridge. I've ridden my bike over it hundreds of times since I was a kid. And I heard that it was going to be torn down. So I wanted to go and sort of do a portrait of it before it was gone. Because who knows what it's going to look like when they end up replacing it. Right now, there's another painting of it somewhere else. It's surrounded by these lovely willow trees that sort of grow around it. So when you're in the meadow below it, it has this beautiful effect where you're looking through those arches at these willow trees. It's quite lovely. So I wanted to make sure I got this done. And this is a lot of poison ivy in here, so be careful if you go look at it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, particularly about what I do, why I do it, how I do it. If anybody has anything in particular that they'd like to know. My father taught photography. He was part of the audio-visual program, which was basically teaching teachers how to use audio-visual as part of the teaching process. But they had a dark room there, and they taught black and white photography. And so when I grew up, my crib was literally in the dark room at our house. I grew up with a very photographic background, particularly thinking in black and white, and thinking about composition, about looking through a lens and composing things. And so value is really important in my work. And you can see that in the light. The light versus shadow and the design that makes within the composition is very important in my work. So I think that it was a big influence early on. I do a little bit of both. I would say it's about half and half. A lot of times I'll go out on site and I'll work on a painting for 3 hours or so and get things done. And then I'll take it back to the studio, and the next day I'll start fiddling with it in the studio. Sometimes I have photographic reference, sometimes I just work out of my head, just sort of memorizing what the place was. And it's a little bit of back and forth. And then sometimes I'll start a painting completely from photographs that I take. So it's a little bit of both. I want to make sure that they don't become just paintings of photographs or copies of photographs. It's not really what I'm interested in painting. I really love that sense of space and light that you get from being in a place. And a photograph really kind of doesn't convey that to me. So, but a little bit of both. Yeah. I'm not afraid to say I paint from photographs because it does open up a whole avenue of working that's impossible if you are just relying on working from light, because I'm very much into a very particular kind of light, and if I were to wait for that light to happen to paint, I would not get anything done. So, and we live in the 21st century, so why not use these tools that we have to help get. What matters to me is the end result, not necessarily how it was done so much. And there's another thing that sort of a subtle thing that I have been working against for a while, and that is this whole plein air movement thing, which is, it's a very popular thing now to paint outside and have competitions, and people paint within a certain time period and a certain place, and they have to do everything on site. And I think that's great for people who want to do that, but I also think it sort of limits what happens in a painting. And a lot of these paintings are done what's called indirect painting. So it's not just done wet and wet while you're there, all quick, all juicy paint all happening at one time. There's layers and layers, and I'm letting layers dry, and I'm glazing on top of it, and scumbling, and doing all these things that can only happen when you're working in the studio over a longer period of time. So there's a painting of the barn door with the cat bowls back there. That painting I worked on for months and months. There's so many layers in that painting. And that would never really happen if I was sort of just working sort of directly outside. There's a whole different sort of mindset that happens when you're in the studio. I love sitting in the studio, being protected, no one around me, you know, nice music, and just working on my painting undistracted. When you're sitting in a barn with cows and cats and tractors going by, and you know, it's a whole different experience. The medium is just liquid, which is an alkyd-based medium. But yeah, one of the things I teach in my classes is about how paint can, different types of paint can help you achieve the effect of lighting. So one of them is opacity versus transparency. So opaque paint reflects light, transparent paint absorbs light. So to get this to feel like sunlight and not to feel like a deep shadow, I'm using two different types of paint to describe that, which enhances that sense of light. So that's a comment I get a lot. I love the light in your paintings. Yeah. Well, the light is the subject of my paintings. So, you know, I seek out these places and objects and things to paint because I like what the light does to them. So that is the driving force behind everything.
They're luminous.
Luminosity.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What artists have you do you admire and have learned from, maybe?
I look at all kinds of artists. You know, Sargent, Vermeer, Daniel Garber, Sorolla. I had great teachers at the Academy, Arthur DaCosta, John Butzel, Mo Brooker, you know, lots of different artists, lots of different influences, but Diebenkorn is a great influence. The light in Diebenkorn paintings is amazing. Morandi is another great influence. The list goes on, yeah. Hammershøi, the great Danish painter. Yep. They feel like paintings now. It's interesting, when they're in the studio, they're just these boards that have paint on them, and I'm really unsure about whether they work or not. And it's not until they hang on the wall and they have a frame around them and they're lit, but they actually become art. And you know, they're finished, and I can back away, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. That, you know, I feel better about them once they're away from the process. But yeah, but when they're in the studio, I'm always like, should I fix that, or is that right, or whatever. So, and that is a very, it's not fun a lot of times to be in that situation where you're, especially when you have a show coming up where I know I have to have 25 or so paintings for a gallery, and whether you know, halfway through the summer, are these paintings gonna work, are they not gonna work? It's a lot of pressure. Not that I would want to do anything else for a living, but it's not easy. The doubts never go away. Like they say in cycling, what is it? It never gets easier, you only get faster. Something like that. So, no, it never gets easier. It actually gets harder because you keep putting more and more pressure on yourself to get better and better, and there's less room to get better, so it gets harder, I think. The difference is I'm doing it for myself, and I'm not doing it under anybody else's rules about when it has to be done, where it has to be done, how much time it has to be done, you know, all that kind of stuff. Other than the fact that I need to have it hanging, you know, tonight. That's the only, and I give myself plenty of buffer to get those things done. So. Maybe 2 or 3, because this is the first time I've actually had my own studio for a long time, my own personal private studio. So I had all the paintings in the studio, and I could just like, oh, I don't like what that's doing, and put it on the easel and start working on it. which I usually don't do as much. But now that I have a space that I feel more comfortable in, I think I am working on multiple paintings. But I do like to resolve a painting. I need to get it resolved before I start working on something else.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to the gallery for making it all look so neat.